Thank you all for coming to the Wednesday, January 30th meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board. We are being recorded. I think usually the microphone being on is a good indicator. By Chelmsford Telemedia. Tonight, what I think I'll do is I'll quickly skip by the Article 2. We'll get to it in just a couple of minutes. There was a Route 40 committee meeting last night, and it actually came to, I guess you'd say it came to a decision, and that is in the process of being drafted up. I've relayed the basic information to Evan, and I presume when Nancy's got something written up, we'll distribute it to everybody. But I don't know, one of you guys want to describe what it basically says?
I think as we mentioned at last meeting we had, the south side to remain RC and the north side to go so we decided last night to rezone, a recommendation to rezone the entire north side IA, taking away the conflict with the RC and putting an overlay on the north side, which Nancy is developing the language to.
Yeah.
Which was voted last night.
Yes.
So the overlay, it's a SHOD, Senior Housing Overlay District, which is specific just for the Route 40 area at the current moment.
Although it could be applied anywhere if we wanted.
Applied anyway. Well, not really, because you do have some setbacks that are truly applicable only to the north side. Okay. So, but it could be modified and to fit any other area. Mm-hmm. But I guess the takeaway was that Nancy would draft it up. Yeah. We would talk about it at our next meeting, which is next Tuesday, and then the idea would be come back to the planning board by the 13th.
Yeah, and I would hope that if we finish up on Tuesday, we get a copy out to everybody and people have a week to look at it. How much time, Evan, do we need to set up public hearing for that?
Public hearing is already scheduled.
That's scheduled for the 13th? Excellent. Okay, so we're in there.
So it's a question whether or not Route 40, the committee is going to make a report to the planning board.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a matter of, I looked at it, it was relatively self-explanatory. I'm thinking that we may be able to handle that report aspect simply by having a discussion about it, and because we have 3 members of the planning board who are also on the Route 40 committee, they can discuss the decision-making process. If people feel we need a more formal presentation, we can certainly do it.
I'm just wondering about all the town meeting reps that are listening and stuff like that,
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You can sell it to us all you want, but the town meeting is the one
That's
that has
true.
to handle it.
Okay, in that case, maybe some kind of a presentation will be good. We can discuss that next Tuesday and try to get that prepared. Again, I don't think there's a lot of complexity to it, so I think a presentation could be, a 5 or 6 slide presentation. I don't think it has to be a what we call a Brandeis brief in the legal biz.
Does that have to go to, then after the 13th, Evan, does that go out for a public?
Well, now that 13th would be the public.
But the public won't be formally notified what the decision is until after the next Tuesday's meeting?
No, we're talking, this is...
Decision for whom?
No, does the abutters have to, if this is still going forward, do the abutters get the notification that we got last year? And that they should come to the 13th?
I intended to notify the impacted abutters or impacted property owners. It's more of a courtesy. It's not a legal requirement.
But I think it's a good thing to do.
So I'll do that.
Okay.
Beyond the south side and the north side, I did not intend to do any direct notification. I think now that word is getting out that the public hearing is being advertised and will take place for February 13th, my expectation will be that it will hit Facebook and word will spread.
Does it make any sense to post that recommendation to the town
Well, that's
website?
what I said. As soon as
Town website, like on the
I think
homepage.
it'll
as soon as the draft is available,
Yeah.
we'll post it.
Okay.
And it'll begin to be distributed.
Good, so that check should be within the next couple of days, so that gives people ample time. It gives them nearly 2 weeks to review it. I don't like doing these things on short
I wouldn't
notice.
suggest posting it until at least after the Route 40 committee sees it,
Right, and that'll
Oh, yeah,
be,
it's
that'll be
after next
Tuesday night.
Tuesday.
after next Tuesday.
Yeah, next, this
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
Tuesday night, yeah. It's gonna be a busy week. Okay, so that's the story on Route 40. We're also scheduled on the 13th to look at some of the Route 129 fast food drive-in modifications that we discussed, and also historic preservation. And I suspect we will have those available at that point.
Historic preservation likely will not be ready for Springtown meeting, is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
So it's advertised in case it is ready.
Okay. Very good.
We need to have a couple of meetings to hash out some stuff on that to make sure that we're all on the same page, too.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I would agree with
I don't want to
you.
get to town meeting again and lay another,
Yeah, lay another egg.
yeah.
Okay. That said, I guess,
Is that the first chicken joke of the night?
yeah, there will be a few more.
So, Mike, you're going to probably jump into the agenda, but before we open it up, can you give us a little background on maybe what you attended last evening? And bring us up to date with what's going on with Board of Health?
Not a lot to say. They looked at both of the articles that are on the warrant, both of the ones relating to zoning. They decided in the end that they were not going to recommend either one of them. And that's pretty much where they left it. I believe that Sue Rosa will probably speak somewhat for the Board of Health at the town meeting on Monday night. I think she'll simply present the fact that they voted that way, and I don't even know if she's going to say a lot about why. But we'll have to see. I don't think there's not a lot to report. The whole thing really took, what, it take about 20 minutes? Something like that? So, there wasn't, and that was the only agenda item.
Did they mention why they did not take a vote?
Oh, they were unhappy with both of them for various reasons. It's hard to say for sure. I think they thought Article 2 went too far. I think Article 1, there was some feeling that they'd been surprised by it. That was about the extent of it.
Okay.
So, there you have it. Okay, with that said, let's get on to the main agenda item for the night. That is looking at the Article 2 Citizens petition to amend 195-6E, dealing with small animals. Note that last meeting, we looked at the Article 1, which was a competing and incompatible one, but both will be on the warrant. Anybody on the board want to say anything before we start and open it up to public comment?
Well, the only thing I can think of, all right, now, I got a couple different hats, because I'm an inspector of wires, but I'm not inspector of health. I know, as an inspector, you go out and look at things, the enforcing agent, the one that writes the license and everything else for this issue
Yeah,
is the Board of Health.
right.
They're the ones that write the license, they're the ones that can levy the fines, and they're the ones that can have the animals removed.
Right.
So, I really don't know if there's much we can take and do, because if it goes to a building inspector, all he's gonna do is turn around and hand it back to the health department, and that's why we end up with what we end up with.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a technical thing. I mean, I don't know how else you get around that. I mean, Board of Health basically trumps all. I mean, I'm more willing to listen to everybody, But I know as an inspector, you go out and there's a person that's in charge.
Yeah.
And right now, it's the Board of Health.
Right. Having two people in charge is worse than having none.
I mean, we do have setbacks for like buildings and accessories and everything else that's in our purview. I'm interested to hear I'll listen to anybody, but that's basically what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Who's got jurisdiction?
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. I mean, I'm just an electrical inspector and a farmer. I don't know a hell of a lot, but
Probably know more about
I know if I'm an electrical inspector and I pick out a plumbing issue, the plumbing inspector's not gonna be happy with me, because that's not in my purview.
Yeah.
If I pick out a building situation and mention it to the building inspector, he's not happy with me. But they'll all listen to you.
So, Mike, last night, did you get the impression the Board of Health was going to carry the flag on this, or?
No, I didn't, but, I hesitate to speak for them. I
They really should
I don't
be
completely
speaking for
understand
themselves.
what they're up to sometimes, and I think it's probably best to go ask them. But they will be there. They will be a presence at the meeting on Monday night. I gleaned that much. Okay.
I just,
Yeah.
being down this road, I know that's what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
so.
All right.
Well, why don't we listen to the
Okay. Well,
presentation?
we have a number of people in here. I bet a number of them would like to speak. Anybody? Well, you got it, Ed. Hanging in there. ID yourself, of course, for the record.
Ed Buckley, 27 Buckman Drive. And Mike, you've been a formidable foe. You've been good, though.
We've smiled through
You
it.
smile through it. We all have to smile through it. I really want to talk about Article 1. I wasn't here last week, and I have a few questions about it. I'd like to know who sponsored it, who drafted it.
Okay.
And I have questions about that. The other questions I have, I don't even think we'd be here tonight if you guys last August didn't get a little too greedy and take the 40 to 15. If you took it to 20, we probably wouldn't even be here tonight. In all honesty, we probably wouldn't even be here. You had setbacks. You've dropped everything. And there are other cities and towns that have competing bylaws, Board of Health regulations, and they seem to work out fine. Now, Glen Cole seemed to think it was under the purview of the Board of Health, and it is in many degrees, but still, other cities and towns do have zoning bylaws put forth by the planning board, and they do have Board of Health regulations, and they coexist. I don't know why people on this board or the Board of Health don't feel that they can come together for this, for the good of the community and hash this out. Now, I got to give Evan kudos, because I spoke to Evan several months ago, and I made that point. And Evan told me, Ed, you don't get it. The planning board and the Board of Health will never sit down to a discussion. Sort of saw that last night, Mike, when, Anne Marie thought she was caught,
Yeah.
blindsided. I think it'd be in the best interest of everybody in town if you, as the chairman, and the planning board in general, could get together with the Board of Health and sit down and come up with some responsible setbacks. We went after 40,000. I mean, and they're saying that the document from the Board of Health is a living, breathing document. The only, exceptions that have been made have been towards the chicken owners group. We haven't been thrown a bone. We have a setbacks. We want to see more done with the water setbacks. Lowell, Lexington, Billerica, Arlington have 100-foot setbacks from year-round bodies of water. Everything can be amended on the floor of town meeting.
True.
I just don't see how everybody here can go from 40,000 square feet to absolutely nothing. I find it irresponsible, a bit reckless on part of the planning board. And another thing, in full disclosure, Mike, you and Nancy have chickens.
Yes, we do.
I think, Henry, you have chickens.
I'm
Anybody-
underneath a total different thing.
Oh, I understand. You guys have the 40,000 square feet.
No,
I-
I'm underneath something totally different.
You're on
I'm
the farm.
agriculture. I've got 40
Right,
acres.
right. And I understand that. Is there anybody else on the board have chickens that haven't disclosed it? I mean, that would be nice to know. Ken LaFave disclosed he had chickens illegally, but Ken LaFave voted the other night, and what's good for Ken? He just wants his chickens back. He's quoted that out right out to the public. So he's going to vote on an article that, will help him get his chickens back. I don't know. I think this thing's kind of been going on. Would be nice to see the planning board and the Board of Health sit down and come up with some responsible setbacks, some responsible, criteria so we can move forward. That's about all I got to say.
Well said.
Thank you.
Okay, there are one or two things I can comment on that maybe give you a little bit of a sense of what's up. It's not completely clear to me why we haven't had more conversation with the Board of Health, but they certainly did not inquire with us, nor did we push it when they decided to write up a whole set of regulations. That might have been the time to do it. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. And I do know that boards in this town often do cooperate. We sit down several times a year with the selectmen, and we've done it with others, and we've had boards in front of us. So there's nothing in the system that makes that impossible. On the 40,000 square feet, if you look at the regulations that the Board of Health has put forward, it's essentially impossible to have chickens on anything less than 20,000 anyway. You work the setbacks, you figure the size. You can come up with a contorted lot that might have 15 that would do it, but that wouldn't leave any place for the house. So I think effectively you've got.
They changed,
Yeah. Yeah.
the setbacks to, it was 25, 30, 50 for water. Now, the living, breathing
Yeah.
document that they said it's constantly in flux, they
Yeah.
said backyard only. Henry's son said
Yeah.
that.
Can I
Yeah,
ask you
could
to
you-
get up to the mic,
yeah.
just because people at home can't hear you, that's all I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
But Henry's son said backyard only, and that was just about 3 weeks ago. And so I left there thinking, okay,
Yeah.
backyard only, 25, and 30, and then now it's 50. In lieu of everything that's going on with the storm water runoff, the fourth arm division of the DPW, and our waterways, I think it's really important because most of these waterways are polluted, including the Golden Cove Brook. But I never got an answer who sponsored the article, because it's very much written almost as Alexander Melville's citizens petition.
Okay. Can you speak to where?
Did you guys copy that?
So my understanding is that the town manager initiated the process, asked council to draft the proposal. That proposal was then distributed to Sue Rosa. She provided some comment. I believe Mike received a copy of that.
And then the board did,
So who initiated and who's sponsoring are two separate things.
Well, it pretty much mirrors Mr. Melville's.
So I'm not aware of that.
Well, he
name.
has a citizens petition with 15 signatures from around town to go to Springtown meeting.
Wait, read.
Okay.
I have a citizens petition for Springtown meeting. Mr. Myers has the subsequent new one
Yeah,
for the
I've
special.
I've seen
If you look-
yours and Mr. Myers. I was not aware of a third.
Oh, there's
I
a
think-
third.
I think it'd be pretty easy to figure out which one came first by emails, and then the date that this third one was clocked in with the town clerk.
But
My
they almo-
understanding
yeah.
on the town manager initiated process dates back to maybe late November.
So
November.
you're telling me Paul Cohen is the architect of Article 1?
He's the one who initiated the process,
He initiated the process, correct?
Council drafted it. I can't tell you, I can't answer as to.
If you
what the-
read Mr. Melville's citizen's petition, it mirrors it. Something smells. To me, it's just not right.
Yeah,
If the planning board's gonna pick up the water and carry it for the pro-chicken people, we should know. We should know. And if Paul Cohen's doing it, the people should know.
So, I don't think I think it's a lot more benign than that. I think by the time the town manager initiated the process, the Board of Health was already somewhat into developing or maybe even holding or opening their public hearing. Again, I wasn't following this, week by week. There was way too many twists and turns on this one. But I think if you go back and review the timeline, my expectation would be that the Board of Health had already, working with town council, had already seen a draft. At that point, the town manager was interested in trying to create a process whereby you didn't have conflicting bylaws with conflicting jurisdiction.
Right. What about the other cities and towns that do have
But I'm not.
bylaws and conflicting?
I can only tell you, try to answering your question.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, who initiates and who sponsors are two totally different things. The planning board agreed to sponsor the article in the sense that the warrant indicates that Article 1 was submitted by the planning board. The planning board didn't
Correct.
have to agree to
Were
that.
they anybody on this board, were they the architect of the number one?
No.
I can show you Mr. Melville's citizen's petition, and it's practically word for flippin' word. I mean, it just,
I have no idea where he got it, and.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not aware of that one. I don't think the planning board members were ever distributed a third citizen petition.
Okay,
did
that
that
said,
get
let me
withdrawn?
try to rein this in a little bit. I mean, you bring up interesting points, but the fact of the matter is, what we're having right now is a public hearing on Article 2. And that's probably what we ought to stick to. So, I mean, these are interesting points.
Yeah.
Go.
No, I
And
understand.
I encourage you to poke around a little more and see what you can find out.
Okay, well, thank you very
Nice.
much.
Thank you. Okay. Who's Mr. Melville?
Steve Augustino, 6 Pine Hill Ave.
Yeah.
I have a letter here my wife wrote she would like me to read.
Certainly,
I
go
don't
ahead.
think I'm going to read it.
Record.
I think I'd like to respond.
Okay.
How I feel, how we really got here tonight was there was a rat issue on Buckman Drive. We all understand that. We know that. There was unpermitted chickens, trash, dumpsters, whatnot. The rats are gone from Buckman Drive, I would say. Rats are gone from Buckman Drive. We have chickens. I live on the back side of Buckman Drive. The issue of the rats went right from Buckman Drive to me. There were between 70 and 80 emails sent to Town Hall in approximately a 4-week span, all with my name, my address, my property square footage, plot plans. You guys probably know my social security number. The drafters of Article 2 were the ones who sent in those 80 emails. So this is not so much about rats as I feel about a harassment. My family has been brutally harassed and bullied by the people who wrote Article 2. In those emails that were sent to my house are also emails questioning and asking for addresses, names, and square footage of all people in Chelmsford who had chickens without 40,000 square feet, then proceeded to force the town to have those people have their chickens taken away, lose their permits, and pay fines. This is how we got here today. We have all emails. There's probably close to 90 of them by now. All of them.
Right.
That's how we got here today.
We,
So when we talk of only 6 couples and not really that many people have been involved, there's dozens in the town of Chelmsford that have been involved and hurt by this. Devastated some families.
well, let me point out that I think we'll have a broader forum for some of this Monday night
Yeah. It
and,
needs
you
to
know,
be told
they-
how we actually really got here. That's how we got here today.
Understood.
That's how we got here.
And,
We have no rats. There's no rats on Pine Hill Ave.
Yeah.
Nobody on Pine Hill Ave has rats except for one person. Undocumented, refused town inspections, told the Board of Health they had rodent control. Obviously, they don't. So,
Right.
my wife's going to kill me for not reading the letter.
well, you can.
But
you
I
can-
believe it needs to be said.
Okay, well, you can put it into the record if you like.
Every single one of these meetings.
Yeah.
I've sat in the back. I haven't said much, spoke once. It's time that we all realize how we got here.
Okay.
And what Article 2 really was brought about by.
You can definitely take and give your letter to the board, and we'll put it in the file so
Yeah,
we have
well-
it.
There's letters here.
Okay.
That might save you from getting somewhat beat on when you get home.
No,
Okay,
I just...
all right,
Mike, can I just ask a question?
yes.
I thought we dealt with this before the rats. We were tasked with going from 40,000 square feet to 20,000.
Well, it was discussed.
That
There
was
a-
before the rat issue was,
We were asked to do something in that space, and then we were asked to withdraw it
right.
by the Board of Health.
Well, we went to 15 and then the board, I don't know where we got lost in the translation.
Yeah, something got lost in the
but-
transition. Ed might be right on that one, yeah. Well, he's got his theory.
Also, who is Mr. Melville? Because I'm confused. You're saying that
don't
we're
know him
reckless. I don't know Mr. Melville,
Um,
so.
Yep.
I'll drop it off tomorrow to Colleen at the planning board's office.
Thank
He
you.
had a citizen's petition. I believe ours was first for the special. I had a citizen's petition for town meeting.
Yeah.
He had one for town meeting. And subsequently, we decided we're going to do one for the special town meeting.
Yeah. Thanks.
He lives on Monmouth Road in East Chelmsford off of Riverneck. And he submitted a citizen's petition. I believe he got 15 to 17 names. Now, when we did ours, we went to East Chelmsford, North Chelmsford. We went to the Westlands, densely populated neighborhoods. We received over 200 registered voters. And you're talking 15,000 square foot lots. And these people don't want chickens in that proximity of their homes. I mean, I can understand that. You can ask Dottie Jones. She couldn't keep her windows open all summer. But these are small lots. Now, South Chelmsford can accommodate. And I'm going to tell you something, Mike.
Yeah.
The woman from Agway that was up here complaining about her business, she has a vested interest in selling chickens.
Sure. No, that's clear.
Well, if the
She
Board
made
of
no
Health
surprise of
regulations
that.
are not amended and strengthened somewhat, she's going to win on both sides. She's going to be selling lots of chickens and lots of rat poison. So put some stock in Agway because she's going to clean up on both ends. So
Okay.
The reason why I asked you that, though, is 'cause a couple of us have not seen that, so you implied that, that we may have copied that.
well, I'm implying right now that I think Mr. Cohen and council may have copied
But
that.
Who knows?
I just want to let you know, the planning board,
It almost mirrors it word for word. In setbacks gone, square
put it out
footage
there, so I
gone.
just want to make it
Oh,
clear.
I'm putting it out there.
We
I'm going to
don't
bring a
know.
copy
We didn't
of
know
it.
about it.
I'm not just putting it out there. I'm going to bring a copy of it.
Sounds good.
And
We
Mike,
didn't know it.
and Mike,
send me a copy.
you've been fair. You know, you're a colorful character, but you're a fair character. And I will tell you, I really, get the sense that we
Yeah.
can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
You've been fair. Nancy's got a thing with the roosters. If you look at the roosters, almost every town within a 50-mile
Yeah,
radius,
many of them
2.5 acres, or they're designated to a farm only. So
Well,
no, we can keep talking.
We can. Now, I'd like to, again, steer this back a little bit toward the particular Article 2. That's really why we're here tonight. I think a little background is good. But let's talk about Article 2. And we have to make a decision as a board whether to recommend approval, recommend disapproval, or do nothing with it. And there are plenty more people that would like to talk. And I see several. You want to take a shot? Sure. Okay.
Bob Myers, 7 Pine Hill Avenue. I'm the sponsor of Article 2.
Yep.
I'd like to address a couple of comments made by a prior speaker, Stephen Agostino. He was one of the illegal chicken owners. He was permitted for 9 chickens and had 34 animals in a coop in his backyard, 10 feet from a brook.
I don't have 34 animals, I never had 34
Yeah.
animals. They have 14.
Okay.
20 birds and 14 rabbits.
Stop.
That's enough.
You can't,
14 rabbits?
you gotta control this.
Yeah.
You gotta do your job.
Let's keep it to Article 2.
Okay. Article 2 seeks for setbacks from water so that we don't have unpermitted, overpopulated chicken and rabbit populations close to water. Even yourself, you've mentioned that water levels and rats go together. Whenever you have chickens, small animals, and their feed next to water, you're going to have a rat problem. There's no way to avoid it. And Article 2 is trying to set a 150-foot setback from water. It's not going to affect most of the people in town. Most of the people in town will be able to have chickens under Article 2 because it removes the 40,000 square foot requirement. So we're not preventing people from getting chickens, we're preventing people from keeping large flocks next to water because that's what's causing the rat problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have some others, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just share a few emails, physical mail, that I've sent to the town meeting reps. And I understand probably half of you are town meeting reps already, so you probably would have seen these correspondence.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I'll take a copy.
So I do not intend to, first of all, Adam Brando, Precinct 6, Housatonic Ave. I don't intend to read these documents to you. You feel free to take your time. I'd like to just keep it to Article 2. That's what we're here for tonight. There's Article 1 that is clearly set up to put the Board of Health in control of setbacks and care of small animals. Article 2 would keep zoning, the zoning department in charge of setbacks and spatial requirements for small animals. As they've said, water's a big issue as part of that, but it is not just that. If you take into some of the other setback numbers that are incorporated into Article 2, I ran a few numbers here. I wrote them up in my first physical mail to town meeting reps. I just ran a few numbers using the setbacks that are proposed in Article 2. It actually, even with the most ideal property and having setbacks that are included in there, you'd need beyond 58,000 square feet of property in order to properly apply for a chicken permit. So, just to give you an idea that Article 1 is letting the Board of Health do the regulations for small animals. The current regulation, the current bylaw is set at 40,000 square feet, and Article 2 is the complete opposite direction, increasing just by they say they take 40,000 square feet out of the zoning regulations, but the setbacks that are put in there, just doing some rough calculations, it's clearly increasing the square footage that's necessary. Now, square footage that it's set right now at 40,000 square feet for all animals as an accessory to a building. I just want to quickly comment that the amount of space required for a horse or a donkey or any larger animal is sensibly different than the space required for a rabbit or a chicken. So I believe the path we went down towards the fall meeting as drafting a differentiation between small animals and large animals that made sense. Unfortunately, that didn't go through. But here we are again discussing a similar zoning issue. So I really believe that it makes sense to regulate small animals in a different way than the regulation for large animals. So that's the major difference between Article 1 and Article 2 that I see here. Let the Board of Health, let the regulating body exist in one place. And really, passing of Article 1, it does not allow everybody to have chickens. I don't know how many of you have seen the the Board of Health regulations, but they are entirely restrictive. They're very comprehensive, and I think they got their tail caught between their legs during this whole rat fiasco. So it was in their best interest to come up with, sort of overcompensate and come up with something restrictive. So just to be aware that Article 1 is not in favor of everybody having chickens. There is still a very strict process and a large number of hoops that people need to jump through in order to be compliant.
Right. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you for the letters. Anybody else who hasn't spoken would like to get up and say a word?
Can I mention something?
Yes, you
else, I
can.
think?
Go ahead.
People at home, where can they find this Article 2 so they can read it? Planning board members, it's posted, right?
It is already posted on the town webpage.
Just so that people that are watching from
Yes,
home
can
that
see
have no idea what we're talking about, look at it so that we're not getting bombarded by where is it?
Yeah. Good point.
And Article 1's there also, I suggest that they read it. Yeah.
Yeah, the entire warrant is posted and signed on the town webpage.
No, go ahead.
It's
Go
open
ahead.
meeting.
Open meeting. Open public hearing.
Seeing that the planning board wants to get, like I mentioned this to you last night, that they want to get out of the animal business altogether. Why not the large animals? Because the Board of Health has very stringent regulations in regards to large animals.
Right,
And-
which makes sense given.
Right, and
size.
even the structures, there's structures for coops, there's structures for some small barns for, cows or horses. And if you guys feel that, much that you want to get out of the small barnyard animals, why are you still involved in the large barnyard animals?
I think the answer is you take these things piece by piece. But did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I did, because, I really did think about that. In terms of large animals, if you go to the Federal Agricultural whatever, the recommended space for a horse is between a stall space and not pasturing space, but corral space, is relatively close to 1,000 square feet per animal. So for 2 animals, that adds up to like 2,000 square feet out of a lot. That amounts to land use.
Mm-hmm.
And land use is what the zoning regulations are all about. On the other hand, these small animals, recommended space is a couple square feet each. Even if you have 20 of them, you're looking at about as much space as less than 2 sheets of plywood. That's accessory to the residential use. It really doesn't take up land space.
Most of those people
Yeah.
that have large animals,
Yeah.
well over an acre,
Yeah,
mostly.
That's right. That's right.
And
So the 40,000 square feet minimum, it makes sense
Right.
because large animals are using up
Right,
the land.
right.
We've also had another town warrant that passed just
Yeah.
last year, talking about that stuff too, that was sponsored by citizens.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I remember last week, Bob Myers was talking about his truck. And Henry, I got to tell you, you're a farmer, corn byproducts are all put in the fuel. It's sweet. Rodents go after it. They'll eat your evaporator hoses, go into your pollution control.
I was just trying to take and tell them there is a class action.
But it's every car because the sweetness of the fuel. Oh no, I'm talking about the fuel itself.
Oh, I was talking about the wire, the insulation for the wires.
No, the fuel itself, ethanol. It's a corn byproduct, and the sweetness of the fuel, it gets through those hoses, and those animals will do a number on those hoses.
I would think that'd be the end of the animal.
Well, not necessarily, Mike. They're
That's
pretty
a lot.
rugged. They're pretty rugged.
I know, they got little
Huh?
signs on the side of the pump saying, don't drink this stuff.
But, you know, and Mike, you brought up the lush years. Dottie's been here 41 years. I've been here 27. We've all experienced some lush years through
Yeah.
the time. I'm not, you know, I'm not saying it couldn't be, but any time during those lush years, we never saw rats. And we know the rats are in the brook. But
Yeah.
when you have people dumping chicken poop, which the rats eat, and chicken feed,
Yeah.
it caused an explosion. We went through hell this summer.
Well,
And we're not against chicken people. It's not us against them. It really isn't. We just would like responsible setbacks. And Nancy, you weren't here. And I talked to Evan several months ago, and he said I was crazy to think that the planning board and the Board of Health could sit together and come up with something. And you know what? Anne Marie Rourke reinforced that last night. I just would like to see both boards get together with some responsible language. And, you know, there's several communities around here that have competing regulations and planning boards that set forth responsible bylaws. They work together. I think it'd be in the best interest of the people in this town for this board and the Board of Health to work together. But I'll let it go.
thanks. Do we have anybody else who would like to speak? Yes, I see one there now.
Good evening. Laura McLeod, 56 Winter Street. I too would like to hand out a letter that I sent to all town meeting. And again, I'm sorry if it's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to go over a few things. I did a little, little work on the internet today, as far as setback from wetlands. In our case, we're about 50 feet from wetlands. And I was just kind of curious, just a little bit more about wetlands and runoff. And the 150 feet from a standing waterway, I think, is a little extreme. 50 feet from a waterway is sufficient for soil to absorb any excess runoff. And we compost. So if you compost and you manage your compost well between the carbon and the nitrogen, and you're doing it in a well-drained area, any of that composting tea that is being made is being absorbed into the ground directly. Therefore, it's being filtered by the soil rather than running off into the waterway. So it doesn't really create an issue. Our waterways are being polluted by runoff every day, and it's getting worse. In fact, I have to call the Board of Health tomorrow to report something that I saw today walking my dog behind Choice Fitness and used to be Harrington Liquors, but rainbows in the brook of oil, just like bad. So, so we obviously have a problem with runoff, and, it's not just waste from chickens or from rabbits. The runoff is being polluted by a lot of other factors. Sediment runoff is a problem. And then I learned something today about a riparian buffer, which I'd never really heard of before. And basically what it is it's a piece of vegetation that runs alongside of a waterway, whether it be grass, trees, shrubs, ground cover, that basically acts as a filter. So any pollution that's going to possibly get into the water from runoff is being filtered out. So a lot of it's not making its way to the waterways. The USDA had also said that buffer zones can lower amount of nitrates in the water, and that animal waste can be reduced by 70 to 95% as long as that riparian buffer zone is there. And I know in my
You mean
case,
basically the plants along the edge of the water?
basically are acting as a filter. So the big point is, we're talking about backyard microflocks of less than 25 chickens. We're not talking about poultry farms with hundreds and thousands of chickens. Runoff concerns are generally an issue with the larger commercial producers. So again, I think that the setbacks for the space between your chickens, or being 50 feet away from a wetland, is a fair setback.
Okay. So you would then, so you think that Article 2 is,
I think Article 2 is a little extreme.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you indeed. Lori?
Laurie Myers, 7 Pine Hill Avenue. So the way I see it is, we're being asked the difference between the Board of Health's involvement and the building commissioner. So last time I checked, you need a permit to build a certain size coop. Correct?
What is the limit on that? I mean, how big a structure do you have to have before you pull a permit? I used to think it was 100 square feet. I'm not
Referring to
sure
a
what-
building permit?
Yeah.
So like a doghouse does not require a building permit.
Right.
Okay, even if someone wants to make an argument that it's a structure or a building under the building code, we've never required a building permit for a typical sized doghouse. Chicken coops, those require building permits. So under zoning, anything less than 260 square feet, which I'm assuming is a pretty good sized shed or structure.
2 square feet per chicken, that's a lot of chickens.
It's also a decent sized shed.
Yeah, it's also a decent
Yeah.
size. Very good
Requires
size.
a building permit. It also requires compliance with zoning. The doghouse is not being checked for compliance with zoning, just like certain small portable greenhouses that you buy at your home improvement store that come and go during the seasons. Things that are on wheels.
The other issue too is when a building is built, the inspector never comes back. The Board of Health is supposed to come check their part of it once a year.
Yeah.
So they're the
So
the
how
ones
are
that are on
we,
site.
so we want to put everything on the Board of Health. How are we working out the inspection of the coops or sheds?
So currently, the building department signs off as well as the conservation agent.
That's
And there's-
recent, right, in the
there's
latest?
that's-
And Sue Rosa did share that new application with us
That's recent,
yesterday.
and is ongoing, right now. That may change depending on what happens with town meeting vote.
So we're going to have the health inspector go over and sign off on the coop? Or no one's going to see how large these coops
If
are?
it requires a building permit,
Okay.
the building inspector signs off. It's like any other
If it-
building
if-
permit.
If it requires a building permit,
Yeah.
the building inspector's the only one who
Right,
signs
he's
off.
the only one
It's
that signs off.
That's a structural,
Yeah.
that's not compliance with
Right.
zoning.
And he is not talking about the use of the structure. He is simply talking about the shape and position of the structure. That's as far as his,
So as of right now, how is that happening?
There's a sign-off, a paper
From the
sign-off
building,
sheet.
from the building inspector?
I think it starts with I think it's issued by I want to say it's issued by Board of Health.
Right.
Again, I'm not directly involved, haven't been directly involved. I kind of see and hear things.
So we're not quite sure how that's working?
I know that the sign-off sheet is working very well, because I hear on a daily basis people coming in and asking for the conservation agent's signature.
So we know that the building inspector is going out and inspecting the coops when people are applying for chicken permits?
As part of the
No, no.
application process, he's not doing an inspection. If he issues a building permit for the structure, not zoning compliance.
So if people don't report that they have a
Like
large
anything,
coop,
like
nobody
anything.
knows that they have a large coop. And the
Like
the
any- like-
Board of
like-
Health isn't going out there to check out the coop.
well,
They're checking.
be the same with the garden shed.
Right. Right,
I mean, if
right.
they,
So they're measuring, so when the Board of Health goes out there, the Board of Health inspector is measuring the setbacks? Is that how that's working
I
now?
don't know, I can't speak to that.
I think what's gonna happen is that CDC is gonna get the plans and a building inspector, plot plan, whatever you get. You're gonna draw where the chicken coop is. They're gonna verify the setbacks that they imposed on their new regulations. And then someone's gonna go out there, I thought it was the building inspector, to make sure everything's where it should be. And then that's how it.
So if somebody
starts.
misrepresents their square footage or their setbacks,
Well, it's still gonna be inspected,
It
but
gets
I don't know
inspected.
exactly, I think it's from
be the same with a house or any structure. I mean, there's no, the building inspector is not differentiating between this structure and any other kind of structure.
so the building inspector is still involved. So the idea that we're
If
just sending
what
this
you're-
all
if
over
what-
to
if
the
what you're
Board of
doing
Health
involves
is
a
kind of a
building,
misrepresentation,
There are
right?
situations in which it doesn't. For example,
I
an
was told
existing
they both
barn.
have to stamp the plans.
Yeah.
They have to stamp the
They
plan.
have to stamp it.
Yeah.
I don't know if.
Or
they
is
have
that
to-
still up in the air? Is that another one of those living,
No,
breathing
that's standard
fluid?
procedure now.
Okay.
Standard
So-
procedure now.
So for me, the way I see it is the Board of Health exists to make sure, you know, the coops are being kept in clean condition. They shouldn't be out there with tape measures. You know, the idea that Sue Rose is going to go out there and run out in some muck or something.
She's not, the building inspector.
I've
would
not
be.
seen anything on the Board of Health's permit that says that the building inspector has to go out there and measure anything.
No, that would be required by the building codes as they exist now. There's no change
As they
to this
exist now.
article
So
one
if
way
this,
or the
so if
other is going to
Article,
make a difference
if
there.
Article 1 passes, what happens then?
It's still a structure.
Okay, so
Yeah,
who
the-
enforces, but who enforces the setbacks?
That's
building commissioner.
presumably the building inspector. Now, whether he does it or not, I can't.
Yeah, so
always
that's
say,
another, so
but-
that's another
but we have
problem,
no
right, that we
guarantee
have to
for
work
any other
out
kind of
now.
If they
structure.
apply for a permit, then he would have to inspect it.
If
If they
they're not
don't, then he
but they're
won't
not
know.
applying for a building permit, they're applying for a chicken permit,
But it-
and
but
the
it's either going to
regulations
be al-
define.
already-
They're
They're
two
building a
different permits.
structure, they're gonna apply for a
But,
permit.
okay, so the structure, they have to go by the zoning for sheds and structures.
Right.
But for the chicken permit, there's different regulations for setbacks,
They're the same setback.
correct? No, they're not.
No.
No, they're not.
It's a base for
Not for
20,000.
sheds.
That's not true, Nancy.
That's right.
So, okay, putting that aside, it's obvious that
Yeah.
nobody's on the same page here with this, okay? So this board is trying to push its agenda. The Board of Health, last night, and you know this, Mike and Nancy, you were there, said that they based their regulations on 40,000 square feet.
Right.
Correct? Okay.
Which is interesting because they did bring up the point that they wanted to grandfather some lots, but they cannot and do not have the authority to grandfather you onto
Yeah.
a lot that's got less square footage than the zoning bylaw says. So it's really odd.
So,
It's an odd
So
situation.
I don't know why everyone has their hair on fire to get
Yeah.
this to town meeting. Nobody's on board with this. Nobody knows what the other boards are doing. Nobody knows who's going to enforce it. And
That's incorrect. That's incorrect. You're actually
that is
just.
correct
That's
because
No,
there's
you're
two
saying,
separate
you're asking
boards.
questions, we're giving you answers, right? And then you're confused about it.
No, I'm not confused about it.
You are. because
I'm not
you asked
confused about it.
you
I'm not
asked about a
confused
permit,
about it.
And we told you.
Because there's two separate things. You're talking about a shed permit. You're talking about
I
who's
disagree.
enforcing setbacks.
It's not a shed permit. I met with Sue. She wanted us to put 20,000 square foot on that to strengthen in her thing. And I didn't know if that trickled down to this board or not. What it is, if you want chickens, it doesn't matter what the coop is. You want chickens, you have to get a permit. That permit has to have a plot plan, has to be stamped by the CDC and the building inspector. And then, once they approve the setbacks and stuff, the Board of Health will inspect it. They're not gonna measure it, they're just gonna make sure the health issues are taken care of.
But the
But-
Board of Health, who's enforcing the setbacks in the Board of Health regulations? You're telling me the building inspector is gonna go
He's
out
gonna
and make
stamp-
sure
he's gonna
they have the
stamp
proper
plans that
setbacks?
You have to apply a set of plans.
Right.
And he's gonna look at it and stamp it.
That's not what the Board of Health is telling me.
Well, that's
Okay,
my.
I got a different
Cases,
story
they're
from the
gonna
Board
have
of
to-
Health.
Well, they're not
That's
here
what
to
their
defend
application
themselves.
Okay,
says.
but that's not what the Board of Health is
It's a
saying.
good point.
Okay?
Okay.
So, for me, as a citizen,
Yeah.
who has had issues with neighbors misrepresenting lot sizes, for a number of years. The Board of Health's role in this is to enforce the health issues, the proper handling of chickens, a salmonella outbreak, a bird flu issue.
Yes.
Licensing.
Right.
Exactly.
Educating the public on proper handling, that children under 5 shouldn't be handling chickens, that you're really not supposed to put them near your face because of possible salmonella problems. People over 65 or people with compromised immune systems shouldn't be handling chickens. Okay, that's what they're there for. Pardon me? I have it all right here, Nancy. I'll give it all.
No, I believe you, but
I'll give it to you.
I really resent
Okay.
being told that I shouldn't handle my chickens.
That's up to you. I'm just I'm telling you right now what the CDC says. Okay,
let
and
me-
I have all of this if you want.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. Let me point out, by the way, that the same stuff, in many respects, applies to other animals like dogs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does.
But while we're out there, we're talking about chicken feces, and I'm hearing that it gets evaporated into rainbows
By
and
the way,
sunshine.
do you know what the relative output is of dogs and chickens?
I do, actually.
I do, too.
Yeah,
It's-
I've learned a lot.
I've been working
I've
it,
learned
too.
a lot on both sides, and I think no matter where you go.
I'm coming up with
yeah.
a number of about 10 chickens equals one 65-pound dog.
But I clean up my dog poop,
Yeah.
and yours just goes
Yeah, but
into
we-
the storm
but
drain.
although we don't have
So
regulations that require you to do it. I do
There
mine
you
too,
go,
by the way.
there you go.
Actually, after having read
So,
that,
you know,
bet
I-
clean up my dog poop.
And I actually
Yeah.
voted to raise the fines for people not cleaning up their dog
Yes,
poop.
thank you.
And the Warren article that Mr. Parley is speaking of about companion animals, I actually voted in favor of as well.
Yeah, I know. That was a good
So,
one.
I mean, we need common sense, and I've said this 1,000 times, bylaws, and if a neighbor has a problem with hoarding or people not cleaning up
Yeah.
or anything else, misrepresentation of lot size, people need to know where to go,
Yeah.
and people need support on that. So the idea that we're going to say we'll have all these regulations, but it's up to citizens to report, and when citizens report a problem, they have to listen to a
Yeah.
oh, I'm being harassed, and I'm this, and I'm that. We follow bylaws here. We have zoning. And before you do anything, it's always smart to check it out because, or not, or you could plead victimization after that. I don't know.
Thanks.
So,
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? You've already had a shot. I'll give you another one. You're allowed.
It's his article.
That's true. It's his article.
Article 2.
All right. All right. We'll let him speak, and then looking around, we're getting close to wrapping it up, I hope.
Okay. Surrounding the issue of chickens near water and the amount of fecal output, I guess, it's hard to find hard numbers about backyard chickens. It's relatively new. I know some people have been doing it for years, but I found something from the Hawaii Cooperative Extension Service. According to them, one hen produces 130 pounds of fecal matter a year. One hen. So you can imagine now we're going to allow up to 20 hens, according to the Board of Health's new regulations. That would amount to over 2.25 tons of feces a year. It's quite a large volume. So I think we should be aware of that when we're considering setbacks from water.
Good, a good point.
Yeah.
I might add that it dries up about by a factor of 2.5 to 1 in about a month. So it's a lot less a month or two later. Unfortunately, that's not true with dogs, I've noticed, walking along the street.
Dog droppings are disposed of differently.
Yeah, well, they should be.
Yes, I agree.
They're not useful as fertilizer, that's for sure.
either is chicken poop until 90 days after pumping.
All right. Yeah, it's about 3 months.
And-
Okay.
And 2 horses that we permit produce about 18 tons.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I just had one more
Okay.
point to make out. A prior speaker had spoken about the Article 2 setbacks of 75 feet, how those would require a 58,000 square foot lot. I don't understand how anyone could take 75-foot setbacks and arrive at 58,000 square feet. So if the gentleman would like to come up and justify his math, how he arrived at, that's almost 1.5 acres. There's no way a 75-foot setbacks would force that much. It's probably maybe half an acre. So I'll give that gentleman
Well,
the opportunity to justify
we'll
the
leave it
math
as
he
it
came
was.
up with, if he would
Okay.
like to.
No, I think
I
we're
think he's
we're
good.
fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
You can step up
I'm
here
going
and
to
speak
take
if
one
you
more
like.
scan up here.
Stop it. It has to come from,
Yeah.
to the board, not to the people out there. If you have a question, you bring it to the chair, and the chair should ask the other person, not,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
if the other person who's been shouting over me would like to come up and speak, you can let him.
Thank you. Your gentility is noted.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else care to say anything here? I think we've covered a lot of it, and plus a lot of things that weren't actually really part of Article 2, but I think in the interest of letting things being open, I think it's probably better to say more rather than less. So, with that, if I see nothing more from the floor,
you take a motion,
I would take a motion. Thank you, Henry.
motion to close the public meeting.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now, here's where we're at. We have several options here. We can vote to recommend Article 2. Remember, we're only talking about Article 2 one. We've already covered Article 1 last week time. We can vote to recommend. We can vote to not essentially negatively recommend for or against, or we can do nothing. And that said, seeing as I will note that we've already given a thumbs up to Article 1, it might be a little bit inconsistent. It's not impermissible, but inconsistent to.
I move that we vote to not endorse Article 2.
I think we should at least have a discussion about it,
Yeah.
unless somebody else has, we should go around and see if anybody's got
Yeah.
a discussion about it before we,
Yeah, let's take it around.
I mean, nobody may, but don't,
Well, we usually open it to discussion after we make a motion, don't we?
We can do it either way. I don't think
Take
it's
your pick.
terribly important how we do that. Well, why don't you start and give your opinion? I'll take up the rear.
From my standpoint, I'm opposed to Article 2 for all the reasons that I was in favor of Article 1. I believe that they are at two ends of a spectrum, and I don't believe that this is the appropriate end of that spectrum.
Mike?
I have no particular comment regarding this right at this time.
Tim?
No comment on this.
I got a big comment. You know, I couldn't vote last week, and I really think and I know the horse is out of the gate. I think we're just swapping square footage for setbacks. And you're not gonna like it. I think Article 2 is overkill. I think last week, with all due respect, we took the path of least resistance. And I think a while back, we should have voted for the 20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
I'm just saying my opinion.
Well,
I'm really upset the way these meetings are going
Yeah.
and the way this town is going. And, someone's got to take control. And to vote, let this one go, let that one not, it's just blows my mind. All I want to say.
To some degree, I sympathize with you. We had.
And I don't like chickens and I don't hate them. I don't. So.
Indifferent to chickens.
Like to eat 'em.
We had, that I do,
Yeah.
buffalo spicing. I was disappointed when the article was withdrawn earlier last year. It was a request from another committee, from another town board, and we honored it. They had asked for it, and then they backed away, and that's their prerogative. So, although I was disappointed and somewhat agree with you on that, that's the way it went. So, here we are. Don?
Yeah, are chickens pets?
To a lot of people.
To a lot of people, they are.
Some people say they're comforting.
I mean, when you get 1,000 of them, they're not pets anymore, I can tell you that.
Right.
Emotional?
Yeah.
I would have a hard time with a support chicken on an airplane, but,
No,
Not a rooster, Nancy.
What's your feeling on Article 2?
I'm not sure why the planning board is involving itself in
Yeah.
chickens. I mean, personally, I mean, that's,
It's not zoning.
It's not land use.
yeah.
It's just too small to be land use.
Henry, the voice of reason.
No, I've had plenty of chickens, and none of them were emotional support. They were work for me. You know, I stated my opinion when we first started this thing. I haven't changed it. I really think, you know, the one person that goes out there every year, and like, let me make it perfectly honest. If they're collecting a fee, they should be educated in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you're collecting a fee and you're sending somebody out there, they better well be educated. And I've had issues with that in the past, but they should be able to look at the situation and find out whether they've got a grass lawn between the wetlands and stuff. They gotta have the setbacks. They gotta control it. I basically thought that we should be out of this, and hopefully, the Board of Health and Conservation are the ones that really should be handling the wetlands.
Thank you.
Because that's their preview. It's not us.
Well, I guess I get to give my opinion. It's always last. I agree with Nancy, and I agree with Henry, and I agree with Don. I don't think this is territory that we ought to be in. I think it's confusing the issue. I know the Board of Health has enough on their plate, but they've, to some degree, chosen this. That said, now might be a good point for a motion? Or do you have any more comments before we
Yeah, I do have a comment. And that is simply that the zoning bylaws are enforced by the building inspector. And they're enforced on the basis of building permits and inspections of as-built conditions. Those conditions are recorded on the plot plans that are attached to those building permits. They're on record at Town Hall with the building commissioner. And that's the information that the building commissioner has to go by. The building commissioner is in no way in a position to be doing repetitive inspections of condition. His job is to inspect the build-out, not the annual use. And that's where the Board of Health comes in. They have inspectors that inspect conditions of use. So I really believe that that's where the animal usage, animal conditions belong. I can't see where small animals take up enough space to give it any more consideration than the header of accessory uses to residential areas. It's simply one of the things that you do in residences, like dogs or cats. It takes up some space, yeah, but it doesn't take up large amounts of the lot. Large animals, that's a different situation. That is land use. It takes up significant amounts of space, and it requires zoning to compensate for that space. So I don't see a conflict with the idea of removing small animals but leaving large in the zoning regs. I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay.
You know, just to say lastly too, this was kind of thrown on us, and I really don't know anything about chickens. And I don't have chickens in my neighborhood, and I can tell you that we've never had a problem. I definitely sympathize with the rats because I don't like mice, so I can't even imagine.
Much
but
bigger.
from listening to different people, you know, the rats could have come from numerous ways. Not to say that they didn't, I'm just saying from what we're told. And then, so when people get up there and they're saying that, we have an agenda, to be honest, some of us really, truly don't have an agenda. We're going by just what we're told here. And honestly, it should be on the Board of Health. If they're the licensing board, they're the ones that should be checking in on that. Now, let's say they don't have it, then maybe they have to sub that out, and the people that want the chickens have to pay for it. Maybe that's where it has to go. But to put it on the planning board, to decide, it's really not for us. It's for the Board of Health to decide, so that's where I'm at.
Did
Thanks.
you have a final?
Actually, I have a question for Mike. You mentioned that we have three options: vote in favor, vote against, or make no recommendation.
Right.
If we truly believe this goes to the Board of Health, why not, or can we consider making a no recommendation on Article 2?
Well, that's different. If we want it to go to the Board of Health, the thing to do is to vote negatively on 2, having voted positively on 1. That's the route that sends it to the Board of Health.
Because voting positively on 2 keeps it within zoning.
We're not voting positively on 2.
Well,
We're just saying no recommendation. We have Article 1 already that
But
points it to the Board of
that
Health.
leaves us with a conflict because both of them will come up. Are we gonna, I think the right answer is probably to recommend one and not recommend the other. We can do as a board anything the board wishes.
Or not recommend either one, but we've already
Or recommend
addressed that.
Recommended one.
Exactly.
That one's
We've already
passed.
recommended one.
Okay,
All right.
now do I have a motion?
I make a motion to not endorse Article 2.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 1, 2.
Hank doesn't vote. Oh,
Yeah, Hank does.
Tonight I can.
No,
no, you can't.
no, that's not a special
No,
permit.
it's not a special
Why get
permit.
aggravated?
Because we
You
still
can talk,
value
you
your
can't
opinion.
vote.
Okay, let's get this right again. In favor?
Aye.
4. Opposed?
Now, if I believe that we shouldn't be making a recommendation, is that a no?
I don't
No,
know.
It's more of an abstain.
Abstain.
that's abstain. Yeah.
Then I
You'll
abstain.
be
Okay.
asked at the town meeting to ask why you abstained.
Okay.
I was looking at it as I don't want to recommend, I don't think we should recommend it.
Yeah, well, that's what
That's
she's
what we-
saying. That's what
that's
she's saying.
what
That's
we
what we're
propose.
voting
But I
on.
don't think we should even be endorsing this.
Endorsing it.
No,
We're not endorsing it.
this is a
You think we shouldn't have made it any, on either
Any
one of them?
decision.
I don't think we should.
Okay, good, understood. All right, how does that work out there, Evan?
402.
And what does that mean?
4 voted not to recommend.
Or
There
to
were
negative?
0 votes
No,
against.
to not endorse.
Not endorse. 0 votes against that motion, and 2 abstentions, Walsh and Van
And the
Dyne.
result of that is?
The motion carries
Motion
as
carries,
a
so
recommendation.
we are not recommending.
I did too.
Not endorsing.
Yeah, we're not endorsing the article. Okay, good. All right, we've got an
Just
answer,
While this is fresh on the
Yes.
board's mind,
I guess.
for Article 1, which is a planning board-sponsored article,
Yeah,
normally someone from the planning board presents the article,
yes.
as simple as it may be.
Well, it's going to be a
Somebody's
struggle.
going to have to present this.
I will do it unless a volunteer steps forward. And I
raise
don't
my
see it,
hand.
I see everybody
I-
ducking under the table.
I might if, we'll talk.
Okay.
You have it unless I,
Someone should step forward.
yeah, since it came from him.
He'll have plenty to
He
do.
will have plenty to do.
Okay. All right, now, before we wrap it up, let's just make sure there aren't any other things we need to handle. We have a meeting on the 13th, which is 2 weeks out. We have a posted meeting at 6:30, I believe, right before the special town meeting. That's unlikely to really happen, that's a pro forma thing that we do in order to,
We've done it in the past.
we've done it, we
We've
have
done it.
in the past had meetings, but I don't see anything coming up that's gonna cause us to need to,
But it means get there early.
but it means get there early anyway, and you get a good seat, right?
Let me have one more comment from
Yeah.
Nancy. I know you worked on the historical thing. Something I saw this year.
Huh?
Is the meeting adjourned?
No, the meeting's not adjourned yet, but we're done. We've closed the public hearing.
Thank you, Mike.
And thank you.
All right, thank you for
Yep.
your consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Identifying historical properties.
yes.
We had a person in front of us this year that the engineer said, looked at the homeowner, and the homeowner said, no, there's no historical properties.
Yeah.
Whatever we do, I'd like to see, I mean, I know the engineers were at that piece of property for months and months and months. There's no reason that they shouldn't have that information on the plans, and maybe put some, little bit more teeth into making sure they identify them. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do know what you're
I
talking
just, something
about.
for you to think about, that's all.
Yeah,
Nothing, I'm not
and-
asking for anything in particular, but I just think if you're gonna do it, you gotta take and,
So the issue kind of comes home then. We have,
and I just. I think-
in some years past, on certain applications, I have promoted passing the application to the Historical Commission to get their comments before we vote. And there has been significant opposition from the planning board, from some planning board members to doing that.
No,
Um,
what I'm thinking of.
The
is
problem
having
is,
them date the buildings that are on it. Anything over 200 square feet, put a date on it.
well, here's the thing. The dates of record are in the assessor's database. The assessor's database is not necessarily accurate.
It's a place to start.
It's a place to start, okay? So when an applicant comes to the building commissioner for a building permit, the building commissioner is required to check for the date of construction of the building. And if the construction is over 75 years old, pass that application to the Historical Commission for review.
Yeah.
All right? The reference used by the building commissioner to make that determination is the assessor's database.
Yeah.
So to the extent that the age in the assessor's database is over 75 years old, it does indeed get passed to the Historical Commission. That has improved significantly in the last couple of years.
So you think we got a big enough net that we don't have to worry about it?
No, I don't.
Oh.
I don't. The two big holes in the net is that the assessor's database tends to be, the date in the assessor's database tends to be based on the last significant renovation of the property, which is not necessarily the construction date of the property. Okay? So you may indeed have a property that is 300 years old and absolutely of historical significance, but if it was significantly renovated in the 1950s, it's not going to show up as triggering review by the Historical Commission.
Can I jump in?
Yeah?
So I don't know what specific circumstance you're referring to
Yeah.
Well, I was going to get to
on this
that.
board, but that situation no longer exists.
Okay?
Several years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, staff sat down and met with the Historical Commission.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's been that long, but yeah,
They brought
did.
it, there was a specific scenario where I think a building was demolished
Yes.
based upon the assessors. So the outcome of that was staff told the Historical Commission, give us your manual updates. And they did. They started with the oldest homes. And last time we met with them, they were very satisfied that anything that was of interest to them was updated.
Okay,
So there's a book that the
So-
Historical Commission,
I've seen it.
yeah,
a three-ring binder, that they've provided their list.
okay.
That's the
Has
list that's
that,
used.
has that list been transferred into the assessor's database?
No. I mean, we could do that, but that's not, we don't go to the assessor's database. The building commissioners don't go to the assessor's database. The building commissioners are the one who initially determine whether it goes to historical or not.
So
So
the-
between the historical commission and the building department, they're on the same page.
So the building commissioner now goes to the book instead of the database to determine the age?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, so that's the first issue. And the second issue is that there may be accessory structures that are not recorded
Right.
as aged with the primary structure. And I think that's the situation that you're speaking of.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I don't know what can be done about that except to make the building commissioner aware to
I'm just trying,
actually review the situation before.
just trying to give you some food for thought.
Yeah.
If you're trying to put something together, think
Yeah.
about it, that's all.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, what we could do is anytime a plan comes to us that involves demolition of an existing structure, have it reviewed by Historical Commission as part of the department inputs.
Well, even that,
You know.
even if you just had the
Yeah.
engineer that's there, they
Yeah.
can put a date on it, and
Yeah.
if you disagree with it, send it to historic.
Yeah.
If they put a date on it, we can take and agree with it, we move along and we get things done,
I'm,
instead of trying to bind it up too much.
yeah, that would not fit into the historical preservation bylaw very well, but it would fit into, I think, our application processing.
But are we seeing this as a
sections.
problem right now? I mean,
Yeah,
you're
there's
saying there was a problem and then
Yeah.
you
I
guys
mean,
got together, you fixed it.
That's a different problem.
Well, any problem that exists kind of
We try to learn from our
they're
mistakes.
kind of
in the past.
equally important to
Yeah.
a variety of people.
Yeah.
I would say that the most logical solution here is the way the first problem was solved. Have the Historical Commission identify large outbuildings over a certain size that can be used for habitation, maybe it's a one-car garage and bigger.
Oh, yeah.
And if they deem it important, they should add it to their inventory for the
It should be in the
commissioner.
inventory.
Yeah.
That's where I would start.
Yeah.
The other option is, if the primary house is on the list and there's an accessory demolition request, automatically send it to the Historical Commission because the property is historic. And maybe the accessory structure is also historic. So there's easy solutions.
I think there is, yeah. I think there is. I think it would be really useful if we did address it in our procedural section of the bylaws.
The problem with procedural is that the Historical Commission meets once a month.
I know.
The way they do their business is very, very rigid. They have no professional staff. They do business via phone calls and through Colleen's office. So if the planning board's interested in kind of expedited permitting or, kind of working with the applicant when the applicant submits what the planning board needs, you can't wait on historical. That would be minimum 2-month wait. That's what I'm saying. There's gotta be.
Does community development have the ability to forward a request for comments to historical when they when they receive the application?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, so that it doesn't have to come through us, then go to historical and come back to us.
Yeah, I mean, a good example is within COID.
Yeah.
COID says if it's over
right.
75,
Yeah.
it must go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't had a situation like that.
Yeah,
with
but
COID,
eventually you'll get one.
Right?
But that could become part of the standard process as
Yeah, again,
opposed
for
to just
planning board, you're
COID.
primarily dealing with commercial and subdivisions.
That's right.
So again, I'm not exactly sure what specific example you're referencing. I can't think of any historical
But
commercial
ZBA
project.
may very well be dealing
ZBA
with
deals
it.
with it all the time. Colleen is very involved in both the ZBA and the historical. She's the point person for historical. And I don't think we've lost a principal historic structure in a number of years.
That's true.
Now,
Or at least not one, we haven't lost one unconsciously.
full demolition.
We've had a
Full
couple we've
demolition.
argued about.
If you're remotely going into partial demolition, and what's partial demolition, I'll tell you that I've been here 12 years and I still disagree with the Historical Commission. They would have you believe that if you remove, at one time, if you changed out a window or a doorknob, it was demolition. Majority of the commission didn't agree with that, but some members did.
Yeah, I get it.
Now we're left with, if you have a ranch and you blow off the roof and you want to put a second story on, is that demolition? I don't view that as demolition, okay? But eventually, that's going to come to a head. Because it's going to be the
Yeah.
wrong neighborhood and the wrong house and
Yeah.
similar to this, neighbors and abutters will start, floating in emails and inquiries.
Yeah.
But you're also left with houses that are mid-60s, are very soon going to be over 75 years old.
Yeah.
So you can play this all out. My guess is majority of town meeting is not going to be okay with a 1960 split being considered historic.
Yeah.
So I think this is all.
Unless it has the original red linoleum.
I think it's all going to resolve itself, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's why I said
Well, I
you
mean, it's
mentioned.
currently somewhere around 40,
Problems.
45.
I'm not sure we're losing historic structures left and right.
No,
We don't
we're not.
have, there isn't a market pressure where they're being requested for demolition.
Yeah.
The nice thing about Chelmsford is people want to move here to live in old homes.
Yeah, they do, fortunately.
Not many are being demolished.
Yeah. Although I'll tell you, having grown up in Lexington, I can tell you what some of this looks like
We're
when
nowhere
you start
near
talking
there.
about, a half an acre lot
No,
with a
but
$2
we're
million
nowhere near those
home.
market pressures.
Yeah, nothing
Yeah.
like that. Great. Okay, anything else to discuss before I look around and see if somebody... Yeah, before Henry makes his motion?
Too late, motion to adjourn.
Second. Thanks, Henry. Wow.